I mean, for a kid who absolutely is passionate about airplanes, this was it. This was the beginning of my obsession with the Skunk Works. And we're walking around it. Of course, they had those 7-foot wings, the real sharp leading edge, and it was just very, very cool. And Danny said, "Well, get in the cockpit." So I was a little bit hesitant, but hey, I'm 10. I got to sit in the world's coolest jet. So we opened the canopy. I get in. I close the canopy. Danny latches it, and I'm in there for about 2 minutes, and I started getting a little bit claustrophobic and a little bit nervous because I know I'm sitting on an ejection seat. I wasn't aware at the time that they take those things out when they put them in wind tunnels. So I wasn't, there was no fear of me, being ejected out of the airplane, but I didn't know that. So I went to unlatch the canopy, and the latch mechanism jammed. Danny couldn't open it from the outside because he wasn't strong enough, and I was incapable. I was afraid to touch anything. So he had to go get Shore Patrol and the Marine Guards and some maintenance guys to come into this classified area and take this 10-year-old out of the cockpit of the XF-104. So that was the beginning of my passion of all things Skunk Works. And consequently, I ended up joining the Air Force, and I ended up at Lowry Air Force Base in Denver. Now we're fast forwarded to February of 1964. I have a specialty where I'm a communications specialist, specializing in ground-based telemetry and such. And I get set of orders to go to Edwards Air Force Base in California to support 3 programs for Category 1 testing. And they listed 2 of them. One was the YC-141 Starlifter, a Lockheed airplane. The other was the North American XB-70 Valkyrie, and a classified program. I arrived there, say the last week of February. Saturday morning, I believe it was the 29th of February, it was a leap year. Something set off the deluge system and the fire alarms on the flight line. And I had a flight line badge, but the barracks were 8 miles from the flight line, and someone had already taken the truck that morning. So I had to wait. I knew something cool had come in. I didn't know what it was. And what it was, 2 Blackbirds came in from Area 51. They came straight in, and they had the engines running, but they had turned for the rear end of the aircraft to be pushed into the hangar, but the engines were still running. And the heat from 4 J-58s set off the deluge system in the hangar and about drowned the Lockheed reps that are in there. So I didn't hear anything. I didn't see anything the rest of the weekend. You heard stuff during the week. And I had worked an awful lot of overtime, so I had 4 days off. And it was a Tuesday. It was March 10th, 1964. It's about 3:15 in the afternoon. We're waiting for the shuttle plane to go from Edwards into Hawthorne, where Northrop had their headquarters. They're on Prairie Avenue. And I hear this roar down the flight line. I see debris and stuff being blown across Rogers Dry Lake, and I run down the taxiway, and I look towards what was the new tower, which is now the old tower at Edwards. And at first I thought it was the X-15 rocket, the North American X-15 rocket plane, but people were too small. About that time, they said, "Hey, we're loading." So I had to run back up, got in the airplane, and it was a Piaggio, an Italian airplane. It was a gull-wing pusher type, but it was just 2 rows of seats. Everybody had an aisle. Everybody had a window seat. And we took off and headed over Rogers Dry Lake and banked over the XB-70 engine run-up test pad. And I looked down, and I'm looking straight down on the top of a Lockheed YF-12 Blackbird, the interceptor version of the A-12 and the SR-71. And when I came back the end of the week, walked in the Edwards, into our shop at Edwards Monday morning, hand me a set of orders, and it is to the Lockheed hangar. And with that, I walked into the back of the Lockheed hangar, and I'm looking at the back of 2 Blackbirds. I have never been the same since. It has affected everything about me. And that was the beginning of my obsession, or my ex-wives call it my patent. You know, it was a millstone. It was a passion that has never, that has never waned, in 60 or 70 years. So I have a love affair with airplanes. I have a love affair with Lockheed and the Skunk Works. And down the road a ways, I also became friends with a lot of people, all of them having an interest, similar interest of mine. And one of those people who we're going to talk about tonight is he was, best way to describe this guy, he was a one of a kind. He was a Buck Rogers. There isn't anybody like this person. And most of you have heard of Learjet and what a Learjet is. And it was the first private business jet. And it was brought to the world by William Lear, of course, a Learjet fan. And one of his offspring was John Lear. And in 1973-74 time frame, I had the honor to meet John Lear. And he's probably why I'm where I'm at today. John still holds 15 world FAI world records for going around flying around the world in his dad's Learjet on his 16th birthday. And that will probably never be broken, just because of the tensions we have in the world and where you can't fly, where you could way back then.
Hey, James, can I give you a little bit of a break so you can catch your breath? I want to tell a story about a Learjet and ABC.
Sure.
We had to paint the Nightline set in Washington, and a director had ABC charter a Learjet to fly 2 cans of paint down. And you know how much that had to cost to charter a Learjet. Oh, that's kind of weird stuff that went on at ABC. So I want you to continue. Have you caught your breath now?
Yep.
You're doing great. Go ahead.
Okay. So I met John Lear through another dear friend of mine named John Andrews. And John Andrews was the plastic kit manager, development manager for Tester Models. But because of my friendship with John Lear, it has brought me to places that I never thought I'd go. John Lear is who I was with the first time I photographed an F-117. John Lear was the first guy I was with when we actually drove into Area 51 in 1989. John Lear is the guy I was with who introduced me to a young man who works in a place called S4. And the list goes on and on. But the way I saw my first F-117, the world had announced the existence of it. The Air Force had announced the existence of the F-117 in November of '88. And during that same month, they also announced the existence of the B-2 stealth bomber. So here are 2 stealth aircraft, one made by Lockheed Skunk Works, one made by Northrop. And I was going to have an opportunity, I didn't know at the time, a couple of weeks later to see one in person. So fast forward to early January of 1989. It's been about 45 days since they announced the existence of the F-117. John and I are driving up US 95 out of Las Vegas. We're just north of Scotty's Junction. Scotty's Junction is infamous for there's a house of ill repute there that the government took over. And I don't know how they did it, but they ran it out of business. And now we're about 15 miles north of Scotty's Junction, and an F-117 stealth fighter flying at about 1,500 feet above the road flies right in front of us, and I almost crashed the car. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, I had seen a real bad picture of it, but this was live and in person. So we got to town of Tonopah. We grabbed a quick bite. We hit US 6 and went out east about 14 miles. There's a huge sign that says Tonopah Test Range. we drove down that road 18 miles, and you come to the main gate at TTR, and you can't. I didn't have access to the base, but we just drove along the fence line, which is public lands, and you're looking down on the whole facility. About 60 hangars, all sorts of activity there, and this is before digital cameras. So I have a Nikon. I'm shooting print film. I'm shooting Kodacolor 100. I have some really good telephoto lenses, and we're waiting for something to happen. We're there about a half an hour, and I look to the north, and I see a big black dot with a light underneath it, maybe 18, 20 miles away, and a little white dot with a light underneath it right next to it. I thought to myself, well, that's got to be an F-117 and a photo chase. And sure as shooting, here it comes. I have my my camera up. It's all for infinity. I zoomed in, and as the viewfinder's filling up with F-117, I was like a 10-year-old kid